What forces govern the extreme boundaries of our solar system? To decode the violent mechanics of planetary formation, astronomers directed the James Webb Space Telescope toward Neptune, probing the ice giant using advanced infrared optics. The incoming telemetry data immediately shattered existing atmospheric models. Rather than a dormant sphere lost in the void, thermal sensors revealed a highly active, massive structure surrounded by luminous rings, radiating intensely against the interstellar blackness. Planetary astronomer Dr. Heidi Hammel confirmed it had been over 3 decades since instruments detected these complex dust systems. What the James Webb Space Telescope actually captured in that frozen darkness would change everything we thought we knew about the edge of our world. To understand the magnitude of what the telescope just revealed, we must first completely shatter the illusion of the blue abyss. For decades, standard pictures made this distant planet look like a calm, peaceful ocean floating in deep space, but the physical reality is deeply hostile. That mesmerizing blue color is not a sign of water or tranquility. It is a massive chemical trick. The upper sky is filled with a thick, heavy layer of methane gas. This gas acts like a giant planetary filter. It aggressively swallows up all the red light traveling from our sun, and only allows the cold, harsh blue light to bounce back into the dark void, and light itself is incredibly rare out here. This remote world sits in a state of permanent, freezing twilight. The sunlight is 900 times dimmer than what we feel on Earth. At this extreme distance, our sun is no longer a bringer of warmth and life. It is reduced to nothing more than a tiny, distant star struggling to shine through the eternal night. Beneath this quiet blue mask, the atmosphere is literally tearing itself apart. When the Voyager 2 spacecraft finally reached this territory in 1989, it recorded weather that completely shocked planetary scientists. The winds on this frozen world do not just blow, they scream. Currents of gas rip across the planet at speeds of over 1,200 miles per hour. That is significantly faster than the speed of sound. At these extreme velocities, the wind creates a continuous shockwave. It is a supersonic storm that would instantly crush and disintegrate any structure ever built by human hands. This relentless energy constantly gives birth to massive, terrifying weather anomalies. The most famous was a high-pressure storm system known as the Great Dark Spot. This was a bottomless hurricane, large enough to swallow our entire Earth completely whole. However, researchers quickly realized these storms are fundamentally different from the ones we see on other planets. Unlike the persistent red spot on Jupiter, the violent storms on this blue giant behave like cosmic ghosts. They violently boil up from the unseen depths, devour everything in their path, and then completely vanish into the dark sky without leaving a single trace. This extreme turbulence presents scientists with a profound and unsettling puzzle. In a place located nearly 3 billion miles away from the heat of the sun, the atmosphere should theoretically be completely frozen and dead. Instead, it operates as a screaming, chaotic engine. This tells us one terrifying truth. A massive, unexplained source of heat is actively boiling deep within its crushing core. The most unsettling part is, Neptune was not born in this frozen wasteland. To completely grasp the dark nature of this world, we have to look back at a groundbreaking scientific framework, widely accepted by astrophysicists, known as the NICE model. For a very long time, humanity confidently assumed the planets formed exactly where we see them today, moving in perfect, eternal circles. But modern physical simulations reveal a deeply violent history. Our early solar system was not a stable, peaceful neighborhood. It was a chaotic, constantly shifting battleground. This massive blue sphere did not start its life out in the pitch-black abyss where it currently hides. Instead, it was born much closer to the warmth of our star. Scientists have discovered that it originally formed in a tightly packed region squeezed directly between the overwhelming mass of Jupiter and the orbit of Saturn. However, this cramped cosmic arrangement was fundamentally unstable. As the largest gas giants circled the young sun, their immense gravitational fields began to interact and pull on one another. Over millions of years, Jupiter and Saturn locked into a powerful, repeating orbital rhythm. This sudden resonance created a profound gravitational shockwave that rippled across space. The sheer physical force of this interaction violently kicked the blue planet out of its original home. It was forcefully banished from the inner solar system, exiled and pushed outward into the freezing, empty void. It transformed into a massive, wandering planetary nomad. As this colossal world migrated deeper into the darkness, it did not travel quietly. Its enormous gravitational pull acted like an unstoppable, system-wide snowplow. Waiting in the outer reaches of the solar system was the primordial Kuiper Belt. At that time, this belt was an incredibly thick, densely packed ring containing billions of ancient ice boulders, dwarf planets, and massive comets. When the banished blue giant crashed directly into this crowded field of debris, the physical reaction was absolutely catastrophic. It completely shattered the delicate structure of the entire Kuiper Belt. The immense gravity of the approaching planet grabbed hold of millions of frozen rocks and aggressively hurled them across the cosmic void like shrapnel. This violent scattering triggered a devastating era of heavy bombardment throughout the entire solar system. Countless comets were violently thrown completely out into deep interstellar space, permanently lost to the dark. Millions of other massive rocks were launched inward, raining pure destruction down upon the inner planets. The physical evidence of this violent era is still visible today, permanently carved into the heavily cratered surface of our own moon. The entire architecture of our outer solar system was forcefully ripped apart and permanently reshaped by this single, chaotic planetary migration. When we look at this distant world today, through the lenses of our space telescopes, we are not looking at a peaceful planet that simply formed in the dark. We are looking at a cosmic wrecker. Its entire history is not one of quiet isolation, but a terrifying story written entirely in brutal, system-wide destruction. During its violent rampage through the primordial Kuiper Belt, the wandering blue giant did not just scatter primitive debris into the empty void. Its immense gravitational field also reached out and violently claimed a permanent prisoner. This captive is Triton, a massive, frozen sphere that was originally a free-roaming dwarf planet, sharing the same dark neighborhood as Pluto, but its freedom was brutally and permanently stolen. Planetary scientists are absolutely certain of this violent history, because Triton carries an undeniable physical scar of its capture, its highly unusual orbit. Across our entire solar system, a basic rule of planetary physics dictates that large moons orbit their parent planet in the exact same direction that the planet itself spins. They move together in natural gravitational harmony. Triton, however, completely shatters this fundamental rule. It travels in a retrograde orbit, meaning it constantly circles the blue giant in the exact opposite direction of the planet's own rotation. This backward movement is the ultimate physical proof of a rogue celestial object that was forcefully snatched from deep space and forced into submission. Today, this captive world is a landscape of absolute, terrifying extremes. The surface is a blindingly bright wasteland, completely sealed under a thick crust of solid nitrogen ice. The climate here plunges to a staggering -235 degrees Celsius, bringing the environment dangerously close to the total stillness of absolute zero. However, despite this paralyzing cold, the moon is far from dead. Its icy crust is heavily fractured by active ice volcanoes. These massive cryovolcanoes violently erupt from the depths, blasting towering plumes of dark dust and freezing gas many miles high into the fragile atmosphere. The fallout paints long, dark streaks across the pristine white surface, a haunting sign of the internal pressure boiling beneath the ice. But the most disturbing truth about Triton is its ultimate fate. This moon is a world marked for absolute destruction. Because it orbits backward against the rotation of its parent planet, The massive gravitational tides of the blue giant act as a relentless, invisible brake. These tidal forces are continuously draining away the Moon's orbital kinetic energy. Triton is not locked in a stable, eternal path. It is trapped in a slow, agonizing downward spiral. Inch by inch, year after year, the doomed Moon is being dragged closer to the crushing storm clouds below. In the distant future, the falling Moon will finally cross a critical mathematical boundary known as the Roche limit. When it breaches this invisible threshold, the gravitational pull exerted on the near side of the Moon will be vastly stronger than the pull on its far side. The sheer physical stress of this unequal gravity will become far too immense for the solid rock and ice to withstand. Triton will not gently enter the atmosphere. It will be completely and violently ripped to pieces in open space. The shattered, pulverized fragments of this massive world will not disappear. They will spread out across the orbital plane, creating a vast, highly reflective and spectacular ring system that might one day rival the beauty of Saturn. The blue planet will eventually wear a brilliant, glowing crown forged entirely from the shattered corpse of its greatest victim. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you feel if you saw a moon slowly falling into its own destruction? But what no one expected was what the James Webb Space Telescope recently revealed. Triton's future fate is already Neptune's present. For many decades, whenever humanity looked toward the outer edge of our planetary neighborhood, we saw nothing but an isolated sphere floating in absolute emptiness. Using standard telescopes that rely on ordinary visible light, the vast space surrounding this blue giant appeared completely barren. The dark void seemed untouched, silent, and entirely empty. But human eyes and traditional lenses are severely limited. They only capture a very narrow fraction of physical reality. To truly uncover the hidden architecture of the deep cosmos, astronomers had to fundamentally change the way they observed the universe. They turned to the most powerful and sophisticated space observatory ever constructed. When the James Webb Space Telescope aligned its near-infrared camera toward this distant world, the resulting telemetry data delivered an absolute shock to the global scientific community. The newly transmitted images did not look anything like the familiar, serene blue ocean we were used to seeing. Under the penetrating, highly sensitive gaze of infrared sensors, the physical appearance of the planet was completely transformed. The scientific reason for this drastic change lies in the atmospheric chemistry. The planet's atmosphere is choked with heavy, concentrated methane gas. While this methane reflects blue light to our human eyes, it reacts entirely differently to the infrared spectrum. The dense atmospheric methane acts exactly like a massive cosmic sponge. It aggressively absorbs nearly all the incoming infrared radiation. Because of this intense chemical absorption, the bright blue sphere completely vanished from the image. The planet itself appeared as a pitch-black, ghostly silhouette, blending almost perfectly into the dark background of deep space. The only elements of the planet that remained visible were extremely high-altitude ice clouds composed of frozen methane. These high clouds sit safely above the absorbing gas layers, catching the faint solar radiation and glowing brightly like isolated beacons in the dark atmospheric sky. However, it was exactly this sudden, absolute darkness of the planet that allowed a spectacular hidden structure to finally reveal itself. By completely stripping away the blinding glare of the planet's gas layers, the space telescope exposed what was hiding in the silent shadows. Surrounding the black sphere was a vast, complex, and breathtaking system of rings. In stark contrast to the darkened planet, these massive rings are heavily packed with highly reflective dust, rocks, and ice particles. When the infrared light hits this suspended debris, the material bounces the energy back with incredible, glaring intensity. Suddenly, a series of distinct, massive orbital bands, scientifically classified as the Gale, Leverrier, Lassell, Arago, and Adams rings, ignited in the darkness. They shone brilliantly, wrapping around the planet like a magnificent glowing crown forged from cosmic fire. The sheer clarity of this celestial observation was deeply moving for planetary scientists. It had been more than 3 decades since the Voyager 2 spacecraft caught a brief, grainy glimpse of these faint rings back in 1989. The James Webb Space Telescope captured them with an unprecedented, razor-sharp resolution, permanently proving that the space around this giant is not a peaceful, empty void. These perfectly defined glowing bands of dust and ice carry a profound and violent scientific meaning. They are the physical, scattered remains of countless devastating impacts. Each brightly glowing particle is a microscopic piece of shrapnel from ancient moons and comets that were mercilessly pulverized by the planet's immense gravitational forces. The brilliant crown we see today is actually a massive, orbiting graveyard of shattered worlds, serving as a haunting preview of exactly what will happen to Triton. It is a spectacular reminder that the edge of our solar system is a realm defined by beautiful, yet terrifying destruction. This is where the story takes a true cosmic turn. The horrors of Neptune are not just in its sky, but deep within its crushing core. When most people hear the scientific term ice giant, they picture a massive, filled with freezing gas. That classification is highly misleading. If you were to descend beneath the screaming, supersonic winds, you would not find an empty sky. Instead, the environment rapidly transforms into a suffocating physical trap. The immense weight of the planet's own mass causes the gravity to violently pull everything inward. Thousands of miles below the upper clouds, this crushing gravitational force completely destroys the gaseous state of the atmosphere. The gases are mercilessly squeezed until they condense into a bizarre, extremely dense liquid. This forms a colossal planetary mantle that astrophysicists describe as a hot, thick, slushy ocean. But this ocean is incredibly toxic. It is a heavy, boiling soup composed entirely of highly pressurized water, ammonia, and methane, pressing down with inescapable force. Buried deep within this suffocating pitch-black ocean lies one of the most baffling paradoxes in planetary physics. Located roughly 3 billion miles away from the solar center, this frozen world receives almost zero thermal energy. Logically, its core should be entirely frozen and dead. Yet, thermal readings definitively prove that the planet actively radiates exactly 2.6 times more thermal energy out into deep space than it receives from the sun. This massive energy surplus points to a terrifying reality. There is a dark, incredibly violent internal furnace operating deep inside the center of the planet. A massive heat source is actively roaring within the core, forcefully boiling the thick, slushy mantle from the inside out and fueling the supersonic storms tearing across the upper atmosphere. But the most staggering physical phenomenon happens even further down within this boiling abyss. Deep inside the lower mantle, the environmental conditions become so extreme that they break the basic laws of normal chemistry. Down here, the physical pressure is millions of times heavier than the surface pressure on Earth. The internal temperatures violently skyrocket to many thousands of degrees Celsius. Under this absolute, crushing stress, the molecular bonds of the methane gas simply cannot survive. The intense physical pressure forcefully tears the methane molecules apart, ripping the hydrogen away from the carbon. Once the carbon atoms are violently stripped away, the overwhelming weight of the planet forces them to bind together. The heat and pressure perfectly crystallize these pure carbon atoms into solid, heavy structures. It literally rains diamonds. Planetary researchers conclude these are not small, delicate stones, but massive, heavy diamond boulders. Because these solid diamonds are significantly denser than the surrounding liquid ocean, they continuously sink. They are dragged downward by gravity, falling endlessly through the dark, boiling fluid. They ultimately crash into an alien sea, resting near the planetary core. This deep ocean is made entirely of superionic water, a strange, electrically charged phase of matter that behaves as both a solid crystal and a flowing liquid simultaneously. It is a world of absolute, impossible contradictions. It is a planet wrapped in a freezing exterior, completely hiding a core hotter than a star, where an eternal shower of massive diamonds sinks forever into an electrified, boiling sea. As we delve deeper into the mechanics of this hostile world, we encounter a planetary feature that leaves scientists feeling entirely helpless in their traditional understanding of physics. To truly comprehend the invisible forces guarding this giant, we must examine its magnetic shield. On Earth, our magnetic field is a beautifully symmetrical, highly reliable force that safely guides our compasses and protects our atmosphere. However, the magnetic field surrounding this distant blue world is completely fractured. Instead of a stable, organized shield, observational data reveals a deeply chaotic and heavily distorted magnetic environment. The magnetic axis is violently tilted by exactly 47 degrees away from the actual rotational axis of the planet. Even more unsettling, this magnetic field does not even originate from the physical center of the world. It is severely off-center, shifted many thousands of miles away from the core, pushed outward into the dark, churning mantle. It behaves exactly as if the magnetic heart of the planet has been brutally broken. For years, this extreme structural anomaly frustrated researchers. A standard planetary engine, typically made of spinning liquid iron, simply could not produce such a wildly unpredictable field. The answer to this mystery brings a profound moment of scientific enlightenment. This twisted magnetic shield is not generated by a solid metallic core at all. Instead, astrophysicists conclude that the driving force is the massive boiling ocean of superionic water trapped deep beneath the crushing pressure. Because this superionic fluid is electrically charged and constantly boiling in a state of violent chaos, it acts as a deformed, highly unstable dynamo. As this turbulent ocean endlessly shifts, it projects a deeply twisted, invisible barrier out into the void. This deformed shield constantly tangles, snaps, and reconnects as it forcefully collides with the solar wind rushing through the dark outer edges of our solar system. Observing this shattered magnetic heart teaches us a deeply humbling lesson. It completely breaks our comforting Earth-centered view of how planets must operate. It proves that the physical laws governing the deep cosmos are far more wild and unpredictable than we ever believed. The universe does not owe us perfect symmetry. It operates on a scale of chaotic power that we are only just beginning to decode. The deep blue abyss, located 3 billion miles away, is definitely not a silent, peaceful kingdom. As we have seen, it is actually a violent, highly active machine built on extreme physical paradoxes. This remote world is defined by screaming supersonic winds, a boiling mantle where heavy diamonds endlessly rain down, glowing rings made from the shattered debris of ancient moons, and a brutal, chaotic history of planetary migration. When the James Webb Space Telescope looked into this frozen void, it did not just capture a new photograph. It delivered a profound scientific revelation. It firmly reminded us that absolute darkness does not represent the end of the solar system. Instead, the dark edge is the exact place where the most extreme and unforgiving laws of physics are born. The universe isn't broken. Our map of it is just incomplete. What do you think? Does this terrifying dark world change how you see our place in the cosmos? Thank you so very much for watching. The universe is full of terrifying, yet beautiful mysteries, and exploring them together makes this journey incredible. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark cosmos, please subscribe and leave a comment below. I will keep exploring. See you all next time.